everybody. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. My name is Robert Winfree, and I am your host, per usual. Um, Happy Thanksgiving week to all of my American listeners. I know the Canadian contingent out there I know Canada celebrates Thanksgiving in October. I just forgot exactly when, so I didn't get around to wishing you all a happy Thanksgiving, but belatedly, I suppose, happy Thanksgiving. Um, we got this week. Hopefully a short show. You might be laughing at me after I say that because you know how long this is. But we will be reviewing UFC on ESPN Plus 90. That was this last Saturday and was another example. Exhibit number 26,524 and why 14 fight cards are just not a good idea. Um, which is not to say the event was bad. It was just rushed. The prelims dragged and they got short on time, and then some weird timing of stuff on the main card, and it was just kind of a drag. There were some good performances, and we'll talk about all that, but 12 I think is ideal. 13 is acceptable on occasion. More than 13, you're pushing it. And I just don't know how many two ways. I don't think there's any way around that. You're asking someone to sit there and watch this stuff for 6 hours. That's a lot. That's that's really more the issue than even the number of fights, I suppose. Just 6 hour broadcast, man. It's a giant chunk of your day. You could watch half of The Irishman in that period of time. Sorry, that's an inside joke for those of you who listen to Damn You Hollywood as well. You'll appreciate that. If not, The Irishman's a long movie. Don't know what else to tell you. So, we're going to review UFC and ESPN Plus 90 and a little bit of news. Looks like Bellator has run their final event. How much exactly remains to be seen? We'll talk about it. A few UFC plans got shifted around, nothing major, but enough to touch on. And, whatever else news happens to come up between now and then. We'll see. Yeah, that's the preamble. So, like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review, whatever's applicable to your podcast platform of choice. Always profoundly grateful to all of you listening. Thank you very much. If you've done any and all of that, let people know. Share the show around. If anyone happens to, again, if you know anyone you think might enjoy it, point them in our direction. We'll see how that goes. All right, in your main event, Brandon Allen beats Paul Craig via submission, rear naked choke in the third round. 38 seconds into the third round. Not terribly competitive, as it turns out. I don't. There's going to be a lot of these that I don't have a whole lot to say on. Just spoiler alert for how this is going to go. Brendan Allen is pretty darn good. Moves fairly well. Still a bit hittable, but he's got decent power, good grappling. He's one of those guys in this weight class who just a lot of people have called him a dark horse to win the belt, and I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, his only losses in the UFC are to Sean Strickland, who stopped him in the second round back in 2020, and then Chris Curtis, who stopped him in the second round in 2021. That's it. I mean, he's got some good names on his resume, too. Kevin Holland, Tom Breeze, when Tom Breeze was still going to be a thing. Punahele Soriano, Jacob Malkoun, Andre Muniz, Bruno Silva, now Paul Craig. Like, this dude is a good fighter. He's flying a little bit under the radar because he's not a spectacular fighter. I mean, like, he doesn't produce moments that really wow you. Which, unfortunately, is a mark, I hate to say against him, but the signal to noise ratio in MMA is all over the place. And breaking through that can be very difficult. So generating a lot of, fan support and noise is hard to do. But he's currently on what, a 6 fight winning streak? Yeah, 6. What? 5 of those are finishes? Yeah, only Malkoun went the distance with him. He's choked out all rear naked chokes: Sam Alvey, Christoph Yotko, Andre Muniz, Bruno Silva, Paul Craig. Uh, he's doing his job. He's going out there and he's winning. He's winning consistently, and he's definitely due a step up. Um, I don't know who exactly I would like to see him fight next. Let me pull up the ranking. Help sort this out because he defended. He was number 10 coming into this. Um, Having already lost to both Chris Curtis and Sean Strickland, that's going to hurt a little bit. Strickland in particular. Um, After the fight, look, you got plenty of options for him. I don't know what Jack Hermansson's up to. I don't know what Khamzat Chimaev's up to. Chimaev, between the hand injury and not being able to fight in the United States, that complicates things. Paulo Costa will need a fight when he's ready to fight again. Marvin Vittori's out there. Roman Dolidze could use a fight. There's not a bad fight for him with any of those guys ranked above him. Um, More than good enough to give them all very, very tough fights and probably win. Several of those I'd favor him to win. He's good. He's flown a little bit under the radar for reasons both his fault and not his fault. But we should be paying attention to that guy. Very good. Craig, I don't know. I do kind of think we've seen his ceiling, and it's about the level he is right now. He's probably around a top 15 middleweight, but probably not a top 10 guy. He, his defense is a problem. He's a bit awkward in his movements. He was a little chinny up at 205. The weight cut has not helped that, and there's some guys at middleweight with some pop. I I don't expect him to go on some, big epic losing streak or whatever immediately after this, but I don't think a weight class change was his only problem. The weight class he was at was not the biggest hurdle for him to overcome. Um, but I do think he's still pretty good. He's interesting if nothing else. And the UFC like him, so I don't think he's in danger of getting cut in the immediate future. How that plays out, further down the line, who knows? But good win for Brendan Allen. He wants someone ranked above him. He absolutely deserves it. Give that guy a pretty big shot next. I think that's fair. Moving on down the card. Michael Morales defeated Jake Matthews via unanimous decision at 30-27 to 29-28. The first round was the most definitive round of the fight. In that case, it went to Morales. 2 and 3, I think I gave Matthews 2. Um, Here's the thing about Morales. He's pretty athletic, got some power, pretty good delivery system, but there's just a lot of refining that needs to happen. He got the win here mostly because Jake Matthews was less active. Again, outside of that first round, the other two were competitive, and being competitive with Jake Matthews is a mark of quality. But the method again, kind of the way this went down, I'm not saying get off the Michael Morales hype train if you're on it. I'm saying that train is gathering speed slowly, which is fine. I'm not advocating for guys to get rushed. I'm trying to be realistic here. There's clearly talent there with Michael Morales. That's very plain to see. It's also very unrefined, and there's just some stuff you only learn with experience. Experience is hard earned, and it's the only way to, and you can't buy it with anything other than time. So, curious to see where he goes next. Definitely a guy in this division worth paying attention to. I think how he reacts to his first loss is going to be telling. Um, I don't think he was in too much danger of losing this one, but a couple of more fights like this, and these are going to start not going his way. So, how he manages that going forward, I'm interested to see. Definitely a prospect, definitely somebody you should be watching. Moving on. Lightweight, Chase Hooper defeated Jordan Levitt via rear naked choke, 258 of the first. Um, Watch this fight if you're a grappling fan. There's some striking. Chase Hooper's defense is still a big problem. He's just anyone who's kind of rugged, right? Anybody who's a bruiser has given him so many problems. I mean, he took an inadvisable amount of damage in a couple of his last fights. Jordan Levitt's not a punishing fighter, but there's just stuff that Hooper desperately has to iron out because lightweight is unforgiving. That is a division that will just chew you up and spit you out. But the grappling exchanges these two had were really fun. The final one in particular, Levitt standing over Jordan. Excuse me, that same guy. Hooper goes for kind of a double. I think I heard it called the Kuro sweep. I might be misremembering that. But you hook behind both ankles and then you kind of pull the feet out and you push forward with your hips. It's a nice sweep. He goes for that. Levitt defends, cracks him with a right hand coming back into the guard. There's a pass. They get in. The sequence is just nutty. There's so much scrambling, so much positional work. Absolutely worth your time. It's a short fight again, not even 3 minutes. Look this one up. Good amount of fun if you kind of enjoy the stuff these two guys do. Moving on to bantamweight, Peyton Talbot defeated Nick Aguirre via rear naked choke, 58 seconds of the third round. Round one to Aguirre spent most of it on Talbot's back. Talbot kind of wakes up in the second. Some punishing body work. Top work when Aguirre would try to pull guard. Eventually gets the back, gets the choke. Um, I don't quite know what to make of Talbot. He's young. He's still kind of green. Came in via the Contender Series, so he's going to get a couple of fights to try and get his feet under him. There's some ability. There's some ability. There's some potential there. I don't think it's unfair to say that. Um, I'm just always again. He's like 8-0 coming into this now, 9-0. I'm just leery of guys coming into the UFC at that point. It's very early. He has a slightly longer amateur career than others, so that might mitigate a bit of that. Um, Someone I'm going to keep an eye on for a little bit, see how that pans out, but um, some slightly preferential matchmaking here. Strawweight next, Amanda Hebos defeated Luana Pinheiro via wheel kick and punches, 353 of the third. I don't have a whole lot here. Pinheiro just kind of abused Hebos for a round and a half and then gassed out, punching her in the head. Hebos absorbed a bunch of damage, kept throwing kicks, kept punching back, started coming on later, hit a few spinning back kicks to the body, hit the wheel kick. Um, I'm sure a contingent of the MMA fan base and punditry is going to do the yes, yes, Amanda Hebos is awesome. Um, I'm not on that particular bandwagon. She's not a bad fighter, I don't mean to say that, but she has How many fights in the UFC now? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fights in the UFC. And you're still getting clobbered by someone shorter than you who's just swinging the same couple of punches at your head over and over. That's a problem. She got busted up in this fight. To her eternal credit, persevered, and I give her credit, but there's just skill issue. I mean, look, if Luana Pinheiro hadn't gassed herself out punching Hibas in the head for 7 minutes, um, very different fight. Pinheiro's got power, but man, if you're just used to blowing the doors off of people, the first time you hit someone clean and they just kind of look back at you like, okay, do it again. Eh, that's a moment of truth, man, and it'll prove where you are as a fighter right now. And Pinheiro came up wanting a little bit. Um, yeah, I don't know. I've got to wait to see what Hibas is able to do consistently. She's been trading wins and losses lately. I don't know. She says she wants to stay at strawweight now. She'd bounced a little bit between strawweight and flyweight. Eh, strawweight's it's still a pretty good division, so I don't know exactly how much how high she's gonna reach. There's just some problems in her game that have not been addressed. And kicking off the main card, it's a bit of a surprise here. So Uros Medic was supposed to fight someone else, Johnny Parsons. 4 days out. Parsons pulls out. He is replaced by Miktebek Orobay, who is from Kyrgyzstan. I believe they said he was the first native Kyrgyzstani fighter, which is weird because Valentina Shevchenko's from Kyrgyzstan. It might be an ethnic, like rather than native. He might be the first like ethnic Kyrgyzstani because dude, all those former like not only Russia, but like all the former satellite Soviet states. It's kind of a mess in that respect because the Soviet Union did just heinous things to native populations. Feel free to read up on that if you want to look into some dark bits of world history. Soviet Union, not a good idea, turns out. But yeah, I mean, a bunch of jokes came up because the guy does look. I'm gonna try to say this kindly. If you look up like artist renditionings of like sort of primitive man, not full on Neanderthal. Again, that would be insulting. But a lot of those like just generic artist renditions of early man, you could maybe use his picture. Dude looks like he's been out, on the just out there killing woolly mammoths and fighting off saber. Like you could cast this guy for one of those like prehistoric movies, and he'd look right at home. And then he comes out and on short notice beats up Erdos Medic, out grapples him, very much like Khabib style, get you to the fence, grind you down, good position, land some punches, good position, mat return, punches, mat return, elbow, submission threat, more ground, just in the washing cycle until you give him something, grabs a sick neck crank in the second round. Says after the fact, like 170 is not my best weight class. I normally fight at 155. If I'm lightweight, I am not happy about this guy. um, Definitely some impressive stuff to what he did here. Gonna pay attention to him going forward. Heck of a debut, especially given the short notice and everything. Moving on. Again, that was the main card. Um, Prelims. Joe Anderson Brito. Funniest thing in the world. He defeats Jonathan Pierce with a ninja choke, 354 the second. So Pierce, we have kind of a back and forth first round. Um, I gave it to Brito. I thought he landed the better strikes. Pierce can't quite get his wrestling going. He gets some, but he's not able to get a lot of ground and pound. Brito's just still in the period of the fight when there's a lot of athletic strength and explosiveness at his disposal. And Pierce's game plan was clearly, I'm going to, after that first round, I might drop it, but he can't keep that up. Looked like it was playing out that way. Second round, Pierce is able to get him down easier, gets him to the fence, does a bit of trash talk. I think he says, like, come on, because Brito's kind of like, help me out, ref. A little bit of that. And Pierce audibly yells at him, well, get up and do something then, and punches him a few times. So Brito wall walks, and as Pierce is leaning, pressing into his chest, looking to re-engage, he grabs a ninja choke and makes a tap. Get up and do something. He then gets up and does something and wins the fight. It was the kind of thing you might normally expect out of a heavyweight fight in like describing the sequence. Unfortunate for Pierce, who's his wrestling is good, man, but there's a lot that still needs to be worked on there. Brito, he still has trouble if he gets to like back half of the fight, but um, he's got he's a dangerous opponent, man. You can't take him lightly. The prominence of the ninja choke over the last year or so, it's been interesting to see it rise. A lot of guys have really committed to maintaining pressure against the fence, and that messes with your guillotine. Not completely, it's not impossible, but it messes with it. So a lot of the defending guys instead now like half pummeling for an underhook and then changing that to cup under the chin with the arm and grabbing that particular choke. That'll make people get off you in a hurry if they're in that position. It is because you have to. If you're too slow, and it doesn't take long to be too slow on this choke, getting out of there, getting one of those hands off, blocking it and just separating, it's almost impossible to escape. The grip is just mechanically strong, and it's dangerous. It's a dangerous threat. I'm glad to see it rise. It's going to force some guys, especially guys who like reshooting on the fence, who like keeping position, who like keeping their head in your chest. You're vulnerable to this there's clearly ways to deal with it, but a lot of guys picking up on, oh, this is a counter method. I've appreciated that. It's been kind of amusing. Let's see. Next up, Jose Johnson defeated Chad and Helliger via rear naked choke. A lot of rear naked chokes on this card. 449 of the third. Um, the fight with the crazy with some of the size difference. It was, wasn't it? Um, yeah, Johnson's like a 6 foot tall bantamweight, I think. No, that was flyweight down there. Um, I think this is the one that had like, yeah, just this enormous bantamweight out there just punishing and Helliger at range. Wore him down, eventually got the choke. Just good enough performance from Johnson, who was trying to rebound after having a really less than stellar UFC debut. Middleweights, Christian Leroy Duncan defeated Dennis Talulin via TKO punches and elbows. 424 of the second. Brutal finishing sequence here. Duncan just grabs a half collar tie, a single collar tie. Uppercuts, several of them. Talulin's hurt, backs up, and then he just hits this like right elbow, left elbow, both inward, just right inward, left inward, and just folds him up. Um, Duncan had a somewhat abbreviated UFC debut when his opponent had a knee injury, lost his second fight, and finally in this fight got to show off a little bit more, sort of the consistency about, and a little bit more what he's about. Um, brutal finish, brutal finish, loved it. Heavyweights. Mick Parkin defeated Kyle Machado via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. This fight sucked. You could go 29-28 either way. I think I scored it from Machado, but whatever. It sucked. Jekka Saragi knocked the crap out of Lucas Alexander. Dude, Saragi was like plus 400. 131 of the first. Alexander misses weight. He weighed 148. Um, Alexander was doing well initially for as long as this fight lasted. Then he slips on a head kick. Saragi kind of stands over him. Alexander looks to tie up a leg. Saragi pulls free. Alexander gets up, but in getting up, he turns his back. I'm not saying you can't turn your back when getting up. I'm saying that's very dangerous, and you better know what you're doing. Saragi bull rushes him as he's turning around. Right hand to the head. Just sleeps him with one punch, basically. Hit some follow-ups that were not necessary. But, he stopped pretty much when the ref pulled him off. Just heavy punishing blows. Heck of a win there from Saragi. There's a reason your technical get-ups look the way they do. It's kind of the safest option if you have to return to your feet under fire. And Alexander decided to try something different. Let's see. Women's bantamweight, Aileen Perez defeated Lucia Pudilova via unanimous decision. 29-27 and then two 29-28s. You know what? Not being able to get a consistent 10-8 out of the first two rounds of this fight is pathetic for the judges. Dude, Perez had full mount for like 3 minutes in each round. And it's not like Pudilova did anything else on the feet. Not a very good fight. And, to the point of not giving this 10-8, if you've got mount for that much time and you can't do a whole lot with it, that's not exactly a great indicator. Perez wins the first two. Again, I gave her like 10-8s, and then Pudilova gets on top in the third and has full mount, has back mount. I actually think I went 10-8 in every round in this one personally because they were just wild rounds in that respect. They so heavily weighted one way or the other. Man. All right, I got to talk about this, I guess. So, Perez came into this fight sporting already some damage under her left eye. Um, turns out, hang on. Yeah, it turns out there was some kind of an altercation at the UFC PI. So, story goes that um, Aileen Perez got assaulted. She said this at the post-fight presser. She got attacked at the UFC PI, someone trying to make her pull out of the fight. Other reporters are indicating it was Jocelyn Edwards, for whatever that's worth. And there's some additional reports that Perez's coach then attacked Jocelyn Edwards, and it turned into a fracas. I don't know. She came in with visible damage under her left eye, and then it got worse throughout the fight because, she got hit. It's a thing. For as good an idea as the UFC PI is in a lot of respects, throwing that many fighters with that much, this was inevitable given the setup that they have. Just going to put it like that. This was inevitable. And we can hope everyone learns from this and it doesn't happen again, but if it does happen again, it's probably going to get worse. So there was that. After the fight, man, okay, I got to talk about this, I suppose, because this is just where we are in some respects. So a couple of things after the fight. Perez normally does celebrate via is there a polite way to say this, because I'd rather say it politely if I can. There's some gyration. Just put it like that. So she engaged in her celebratory dance that involved. Uh, there's a name for it. I'm a little sleep deprived and I'm blanking, and frankly, I don't care that much. And now there's a little bit of a thing where the MMA online, especially community, is like, yeah, this isn't the best look for the sport. Her son was in the crowd, so, is that really the best thing to do in front of your son? I don't know. And this brought out, all kinds of weirdness because, of course, it did. Perez then said, like, one of the other things that came out after the fact. Um, Apparently, her OnlyFans is up and running. Add her to the long list of female fighters who are professional female fighters, several of them in the UFC, which is a multi-billion-dollar organization, engaging in some variation of the pornographic trade to make ends meet. This is, I don't know. Look, I'm going to try not to be too high and mighty about this. So let me say the following. I'm of the opinion that pornography is something the world would be better off without. Full stop. Any form. My opinion. I think there's research to back that up, but I'm not going to stand up here and say and condemn Eileen Perez for this. She's got bills. It's not going to be too long before the UFC steps in on this. Overstepping, probably, but because it's a bad look for them to have fighters out there saying, I mean, Jessica Andrade not that long ago said, yeah, I had to pay bills, and my coaches said, hey, do this. It's a bad look for the UFC. Again, multi-billion-dollar organization currently being sued for underpaying their workers and unfair market practices. To now have fighters out there publicly going, hey, alternate revenue stream, boy do I need it. Never mind that the UFC is generating in profit 600, $700 million a year. Profit, not revenue. Profit. So, yeah, there's that. Afterwards, she also said she wanted to fight Norma Dumont and have a, quote, battle of the asses, unquote. You know, if it wouldn't put them in the sights of some serious governmental oversight, are we going to pretend that UFC Fight Pass isn't very, like, I know there exists, like, combat sports porn. There has to. There's porn of everything. And I got a hunch that if it wouldn't bring them under federal oversight in some respects, that right now UFC Fight Pass would have a triple X tab. But, the UFC they don't need to deal with the kind of scrutiny that would bring. I mean, even before they were part of a publicly traded company, like, no, less oversight is better, leave us alone. So, but, man, yeah, I saw Ike Valley Flag say something on Twitter the other day. Said if you don't have a love-hate relationship with MMA, then you're a casual. Casual being a bit pejorative here, but I think his point is well taken. If you pay attention to this sport at all, There's a lot about it to love, but there's a lot about it that you have to reckon with. You have to reckon with the physical trauma, the lifelong physical trauma that this entails, the pay structure, which is crap, the utterly unscrupulous, in some cases outright evil individuals who are associated with it. There's just a lot that you have to try and sort out, man. And if your view of MMA is entirely positive, you have the most casual relationship with the sport possible. And I think that's true. Look, if Eileen Perez wants to fight Norma Dumont, whatever. That's a serviceable fight. And I'm sure the winner will do horrible things to the loser that you can pay money to see. I don't know. I don't know how that works. But man, that just what a sad, kind of depressing saga that thing turned out to be. Next up at lightweight, Trey Ogden and Nicholas Mata was turned into a no contest, 3-11 of the third. Oh, I felt so bad for Trey Ogden. He's winning this fight. He's outstriking Mata. He jabs his face off the first round. Starts taking him down, out wrestling him in the second. Third round, more of the same. Gets on top, gets him out, goes for an arm triangle. And the referee reaches to check. Hang on, okay, so Mata's left arm is the one caught in the arm triangle. His right hand is on the lat and kind of that area of Ogden, trying to push him. Don't want to push him. When I say away, it's not laterally along the same plane. You're kind of like up and at a 45, like you're just go that way because it makes sure there's enough space. Try and keep you from being actually from the blood vessels from being actually constricted. And the referee tells Mata, "Show me you're still there." Well, he's got to have some kind of pressure going with his left arm. He's got his right arm engaged. Like, there's not a lot he can do there. So the referee kind of feels at his right arm, which is exhibiting tension against uh, against the body of Ogden. He does this a few times, and the ref waves the fight off, thinks Mata is unconscious, and Mata is definitively not unconscious. I don't know. There needs to be some kind of agreed upon signal for slightly different positions like this, where the ref says, "Show me you're still there," but if he can't give a thumbs up or something with either hand. Maybe he could have with his left, in theory. Maybe. But checking the left arm even doesn't actually help because of how you don't actually have a lot of strength in that arm when you're trapped in an arm triangle. It's a really mechanically disadvantageous position for that arm to exhibit strength. I don't know. There needs to be something else we can do from there. So the referee, in this case Mike Beltran, and the outside ref and the commissioner, they get together, they look at what happened, and they have to change it to a no contest. Ogden was pissed, and I do not blame him one iota, because you know the UFC didn't pay him. You know they didn't. Why would they? Here's a thought for the athletic commissions, any of them. Had this been a foul that rendered Mata unable to continue, so an eye poke, a groin strike, or whatever, and Mata, I can't continue. We are far enough into the third round to go to a technical decision. For those of you who don't know, the previous rounds are scored. They're always scored. If something happened, again, if a foul happens in particular in the last round, that's the last round. If you've been over halfway through the fight, so if we're out of the second round, you have to be out of the round. I believe is the way that works. If you're out of the second round for 3-round fights, you're out of the second and you're into the third, and a foul happens, you stop. The action stops, and the fighter can't continue. Action stops. Score the round to that point, and that gives us our decision. This happens in 5-round fights as well. I believe if you get like more than halfway through the fourth, is the point there. I'd have to double check because it's not. I'd be just out of the third. Again, forgive me, I don't remember exactly where. But had there been a foul that resulted in the fight being stopped at this point and it wasn't a DQ, we'd go to a technical decision. Is it really that hard to put into the rules, if the fight is stopped in error after the halfway point of the fight, we go to and the criteria is met for going to a technical decision, we go to a technical decision. Because Trey Ogden would have won a technical decision. And again, man, Ogden was pissed. And I don't blame him. And the show and win bonus pay structure is crap. Precisely for reasons like this. Again, do you think the UFC looked at Trey Ogden and said, "I'm sorry, here's your win bonus"? They won't do anything they're not contractually obligated to do as a general rule. So he probably just got screwed. Really unfortunate. Referee screwed this up. The regulatory body screwed this up. Hopefully they can do something about this. Because Trey Ogden did nothing wrong and did not deserve to be penalized essentially half of the potential money he made. Not cool. And kicking off the main the prelims, Rafael Estevam defeated Charles Johnson via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the boards. Smothering wrestling from Estevam through the first 2 rounds, then he slows. Johnson comes after him pretty hard in the third, but can't quite get the 10-8, can't quite get the finish. Decent enough performance out of Estevam apart from missing weight and then gassing pretty badly. That's it. A lot of fights. Stuff happened. Again, some highlights. If I had to pick them out, Allen and Craig is okay. Hooper and Levitt is fun for a sub 3-minute fight. Orobai and Medic, just to look at Orobai and maybe get a better feel for him. Brito and Pierce for the hilarity. Duncan and Talulin for the brutality of that finish. Again, the Sergey and Alexander fight is only 91 seconds. You ain't going to lose too much time. And that would probably be it. I'd say recommending. I did not mention a fight of the night. There was no fight of the night. I don't know that I completely agree with that, but also when I kind of thought about it after the fact, I went, wait a minute. Where exactly would this have gone? There's a few different fights you could maybe make a case for, but nothing really stand out. So your performances of the night went to Brendan Allen, Amanda Hebos, Joe Anderson Brito, and Jeka. He's Indonesian, and Jeka Saragi. All of which is fine. They didn't give one to everyone who got a finish. I might have gone Duncan over. I might have gone Duncan over Hebos, but wheel kicks are rare. I don't know. But yeah, that was the event. So my full report is in the MMA Zone to 411mania.com. Give it a read if you're so inclined. Always appreciate it. All right, let's move on, shall we? So Bellator had Bellator 301 Monday evening. Bellator's card on paper was better than the UFC's. I think in practice it might have been. So let me just very quickly. Because we had some stuff. was it that really kind of stood out to me? Hang on, was there something from the prelims? Um, no, maybe was that no. Okay, so the main card, two title fights, a tournament final. So Alexander Chablis beating Patricky Pitbull, blanking him 50-45 across the boards. Chablis pretty legit at lightweight. I don't care about AJ McKee, Sydney Outlaw. Ralphion Stotts defeating Danny Sabatello again, 29-28. Sabatello maybe having one of the more entertaining fights in any given week is weird. But I agree that Stotts beat him. Patchy Mix choking out Sergio Pettis, 151 of the second. Patchy Mix, I think, is legitimately one of the best bantamweights in the world. I don't know where exactly he falls in that group, but I think he would pretty handily be a top 10 guy in the UFC minimum. Top 5 specifically, there's some tough fights there, but he is absolutely one of the better bantamweights in the world. Really good finish there. And then Jason Jackson scored something of an upset, beating Yaroslav Amosov, knocking him out in the third round. Amosov was like 27-0 coming into this, I think. Yeah, and just couldn't get a takedown to save his life, and Jackson just kept punishing him. Eventually caught him with a couple of punches. Um, yeah, so I'm not going to go into that too much. The bigger story here, this seems to be one of the last like Bellator events as things currently stand. So, the PFL has this is starting to be confirmed. The PFL has bought Bellator. Most indicate somewhere in the $200 to $300 million range. I don't know what Bellator's future is at the moment. Apparently, current operational plans for the PFL are to, for at least 2 years, continue to run PFL and Bellator as separate brands. Unless you already have a broadcast deal for Bellator in place, this seems like a terrible decision. The value of Bellator is not Bellator as a brand. It's the very best fighters they have to offer and a pretty extensive tape library. That's that's I hate to be, overly harsh there, but that's kind of it. That's kind of what they've got. Um, Again, if there already exists a broadcast deal for Bellator for another 2 years, and you're going to play that out, okay, I get that. But short of that, this doesn't make sense. Um, yeah, look, I've joked about Bellator, for a long time because a lot of the stuff they do is kind of comical. But they do legitimately have some very good fighters. You have Patchy Mix, Horiguchi fights there. He's still pretty good. I would have said Amosov. He's still pretty good. Vadim Nemkov might legitimately be the best light heavyweight in the world. Uh, I'd have to go through their roster more off the top of my head. I always forget who's there at the moment. But no jokes, Bellator legitimately has a handful of top tier fighters. That's kind of where their value is, and keeping them as a separate entity is, I don't know, I don't fully understand that one. So, don't know exactly what's up with that, but as more information becomes available, we will, of course, continue to provide updates. So, see what happens. Um, I think the only major UFC news that I saw, I mean, I'm going to check again in a minute, but I saw that UFC, there was supposed to be a UFC event in Shanghai, and that has been canceled. Yeah, there was supposed to be one. When was it? I think it was December, right? Yeah, there was an upcoming one that was supposed to be, again, in Shanghai. Wasn't that supposed to be headlined by, like Song Yudong? Originally it was Song Yudong and Piotr Yan. That got changed to Song Yudong and Chris Gutierrez. They have announced that card actually. Sumudarji and Al Nascimento, Andre Muniz and Park and Junyoung Park. That's kind of fun. Hak Paras and Jamie Malarkey. Jung Sung Park and Shannon Ross, Arturo Tydra and Carlos Hernandez. Then Song Kanan and Kevin Jousset. Not a terrible card, but again, it was supposed to be in Shanghai, and it was supposed to feature, I think, the latest road to the UFC finals. Instead, for some reason, it's in the Apex. Yeah, you know, I'm gonna quote Kaposa, Grabaka Hitman here. I saw him on Twitter kind of go, especially after the last card. He said something to the effect of, "I still can't. I'm still trying to make myself fully get my head around the idea that the UFC is just gonna keep running Apex shows." And followed that up with, nothing indicates the UFC's market power more than their ability to just hold events in an empty building and not feel it at their bottom line. No, he's not wrong. I the other major sort of sporting entity, I'm not even gonna call it that. So pro wrestling was the other entity along with the UFC that really needed to get up and running as soon as possible during the pandemic, right? And so AEW had a deal with a specific place in Jacksonville, I think, and had something approximating fans. They had like the rest of the locker room out there to make noise and to interact with the fans and whatnot. And WWE just ran at their performance center. First of their performance center, they changed it, but they just ran the performance center with no fans. They had just empty seating. And then they didn't like how that looked, so they changed it to the Thunderdome, which was a dystopian nightmare where the ring was surrounded by monitors, basically, that people were on and had, like, so you turn on your webcam, basically, and project yourself, and hey, look, people. And then they pumped in, like, the fakest of fake noise, and God, it was stupid. But they have deals with their networks that they have to hit X number of shows, similar to the UFC. And they have to hit those to get paid. So they did whatever they could to make that happen. But as soon as it was possible to not do that anymore, they stopped. They went they went back on the road. They, whatever their touring schedule was. What the UFC is doing is basically like if the WWE had said, "No, we don't want fans." And we'll just cut out that a giant we don't want them for like weekly television. Big pay-per-views, pay-per-views or whatnot, sure, fans will go to locations for that, but week to week, we're in the Performance Institute or the Performance Center, and this is what it is. and for it not to have a meaningful impact on their business. They couldn't. It has a meaningful impact on their business. Ticket sales, site fees, merch from live events, the whole 9 yards. The UFC was able to just look at this and go, we don't like this for whatever reason. We prefer it here. It's easier. We don't have to travel. We don't have to set up and tear down. Just everybody come here. And we'll sell a handful of premium tickets at ridiculous prices. And you can fight and get horrible brain damage in front of 20 people, 15 of them drunk. Because we'll sell you overpriced beer. That's it. And the UFC feels no ill effects from this. Other than maybe a slight general depressing of the market, but their bottom line isn't really hurting. They're still making, again, like $600 million in profit. And they're basically not selling tickets the majority of their shows. Majority, certainly a plurality. It's insane that you can do this. It's just insane. So, but look, until the force of law compels something to change or they start feeling the financial pinch of this, they're not going to change it. There's that. All right, that's all I've got here. So let me check Twitter, see if anything crazy is broken. If not, we will do plugs, and I'll be out of here in under an hour. All right, nope, nothing new there. So plugs. Um, this Monday, when you're listening to this, in all probability, at least my short shelf life for content on the internet. If it's not heard in the first like 48 hours, it probably doesn't get heard. So you're probably listening to this Monday. Monday, Damn You Hollywood. Myself and Mark Radulich. That's the two of us. We will be reviewing. Yes, I believe it's the two of us. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which underperformed in its box office, but we'll be talking about it. And talking about the Marvels briefly, which opened catastrophically and then had like a 75, I think, percent drop, something in that range. Oh, what a disaster. What a disaster that movie is for Disney. That's not that's not even like that's not a review of the film, that's an expression of reality. If you want to listen to the actual review, myself, Mark Radulich, and Alexis Hayna talked about it last week. Give it a listen. We talk about the state of the MCU, the movie. It's a good time. So this week, again, Hunger Games prequel. We'll see how that goes. I'm seeing it tomorrow. Then, um, professional wrestling. So MLW on Thursday, I think. We'll find out. There wasn't one last week, so there might be one this week. We'll see. If there is, I'll review it. If not, then I won't. WWE SmackDown on Friday, and I agreed to cover WWE Survivor Series on Saturday, the 25th. Because there's no UFC event this Saturday, but there will be professional wrestling. So, if that interests you, WrestlingZone to 411mania.com. I will be covering Survivor Series. It's got a couple of War Games matches, and yeah, that's kind of it. Seriously, that's kind of it. There is one of the world champions, the lesser world champion, is involved in one of the War Games matches. The real world champion is not on the show. Um, they're still determining who's gonna face Gunther for the Intercontinental title. That's gonna be the Miz, and Gunther's gonna beat the crap out of him because Gunther's awesome and the Miz kind of sucks. No U.S. title because Logan Paul has that, and Logan Paul is part-time as part-time can be. Tag team champions are involved in one of the War Games matches, and one of the women's titles is in the other War Games match. I don't know what Rhea Ripley's doing. It's I don't know. It's not much of a show on paper at the moment. But I will be covering it, so stop by, say hello again if you're so inclined. I always appreciate it. All right. We will be back here next week. We will preview, just preview. We will be previewing UFC on ESPN 52, becoming our way December 2nd, and is in fact a good fight night card. Beneil Dariush and Arman Saryukin in your main event. We have a 5-round co-main event, Dan Hooker and Bobby Green. Rob Font, Davison Figueiredo, Sean Brady, Kelvin Gastelum, Killer Roundtree, Azamat Mirzakhanov. Okay, the main card is good. The prelims, I'm less high on. Drakkar Close and Joe Selecki's pretty good. I don't care about anything Clay Guida does. I don't care about anything Misha Tate does. Kind of hoping Rodolfo Bellato defeats Iho Portieria because that would be funny. Full preview next week, so tune in for that, and we'll talk news as always. So thank y'all very, very much. I appreciate it. Enjoy the holidays if you have any. At the moment, I'm going to be enjoying Thanksgiving. Should be a good one. Get to smoke up another turkey, and turkey takes some work to make good. It needs help, but having a pretty good smoker goes a long way. So that'll be nice. All right, I will see you all next week. Until then, thank you. Stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.